One other thing that I just wanted to share with you all is that I recently, I want to say a few weeks ago, released a video that I did on live, and I titled it, God Has You Covered. And so I would encourage you all to go and check that out if you haven't checked it out yet. It was something that was placed in my spirit. Honestly, it was something that God gave to me as my own personal revelation about the fact that although I was going through a situation, God still had me covered even in the midst of that situation. And being covered by God can mean multiple things. And so go check that video out. But God has continued to kind of talk to me. Even after I posted that video, he continued to talk to me a little bit about God having us covered and having me covered. And one thing that I want to kind of mention on that note was who needs to come back onto the covering of God, because I was in Barbados not too long ago and I cut myself. I was putting on my swimsuit and there was a piece that was sticking out and it cut me. It cut my thumb and I was leaking blood. And it wasn't even like that deep of a wound, but it was leaking blood pretty heavily. And I kept using towels and things to try to get it to stop, but it was leaking blood pretty bad. And so I didn't have a bandaid, so I kept wrapping some tissue or something on it. And what I noticed is that it would never heal. Instead, it looked like it was getting worse, and it kept opening up, a little bit more, and it just wasn't healing, and it was hurting right there at the site where it got cut. And so for about 2 days, I kind of just was avoiding touching certain things and trying to wrap a tissue around it, and I'm because I was thinking to myself, this should just heal pretty soon. But it wouldn't. It just continued to spill. It stopped bleeding after the first day, but the wound itself continued to be very red, and it was still very pronounced where the cut was. And so then I finally was we had traveled, and at this point we were in Canada. So now I was okay, I'm going to get a Band-Aid, let me just get a Band-Aid. And so I asked them for a Band-Aid, and I put a Band-Aid on it. I want you guys to know, within a day, by the next day when I made it home and I took the Band-Aid off to kind of wash it and clean it again, it had already began to heal. The second day I put another Band-Aid on after I cleaned it, and it continued to heal. And that was just maybe a weekend or so ago, and it's completely healed. I want to say even earlier in the week, the skin part of it began to fall off. And when I saw that, I said, even from that, sometimes we just need to get back into the covering of God and allow God to heal us in certain ways, because we think we just out here. I don't need to deal with this. It's okay. It'll naturally heal on its own, or I can, do self-medication, or I can do whatever, and it's just going to heal on its own. But what I realized is this was not healing properly. It was not healing properly until I got a Band-Aid and covered it. And when it was covered, it began to naturally, it then began to do its own natural process and healing. And so I just wanted to share that to say, who needs to come back into the covering of God? Who needs to allow him to come and heal the thing that you think you got control over? Allow him to be the healer of that. Allow him to do the work in you in that situation or whatever it is. Who needs to surrender something to God where you think you've had it under control this entire time, but truly you just need to surrender and give it to God and come back under God's covering and allow God to be the healer. Allow God to do what he does best, to work in the miracles, to work in the mix. Allow God to do that thing. Who needs to come back into the covering of God? There's so much in the covering of him. And I think when I looked at my thumb, that blessed me, because when I was looking at it as it continued to heal through the process, I said, wow, all it needed was to be covered. That's all it needed. All it needed was to be covered. It's not sore. It don't hurt. And as it began to heal, it didn't hurt. It wasn't sore. All it needed was to be covered. Who needs to come back into the covering of God? And I'm telling you, coming back into the covering of God is so much, because what God showed me when I was going through my situation, and as I continue to go through, God was letting me know, it might be tough, it might be hard, but I'm doing something in the covering. And that's why I said this message now related to that, because even in this, it showed me you're getting healed while you're being covered. I'm doing a work in you. I'm cleaning you. I'm helping you. I'm growing you. I'm stretching you. I'm maturing you. I'm even, bringing to your attention, I need to increase your discernment in this. There's something happening while you're being covered. It's not just coming there and I'm just there. But God is actually doing the work, and he wants you to take part in that. Who needs to come back into the covering of God? There's something you've been having just letting sit out, and it's taking longer to heal. My God, it's taking longer to heal. This thing took longer to heal because I didn't put a bandaid on it. It took like 2 or 3 days for it to heal, when all I had to do the first day was put a bandaid on it. Had I put a bandaid on it the first day, it would have healed naturally as it was supposed to. Who needs to come back into the covering of God? Who needs to release something to God? What's something you think you don't really need to lay at his feet that you actually need to lay down at his feet? So I just wanted to share that because it blessed me in the middle of the week as I was watching this heal and watching the process. I actually delayed the process of the healing because I didn't get the Band-Aid. Who is delaying your process? It could be yourself. You could be delaying something happening for you. It's time to come on back into the covering of God. It's time to come on and surrender whatever it is at his feet. It's time to let go. It's time to release. It's time to do whatever that thing is. You know what it is. Whatever it is that is in your heart, on your mind, in your spirit, it's time to let it go. You could be hindering it and holding up your process, or whatever it could be. And all you got to do is come back into the covering of God, because even in God's covering, he's doing a work. Don't delay. Don't delay and cause the process and the pain to dwell longer. Because this thing was hurting. Even when I bent it, I was like, all right now, okay, let me get this Band-Aid, because what's going on? It was a superficial, artificial wound. It wasn't even that deep. So the enemy will allow you to sit in a situation having you thinking it's something so deep and traumatic, when really that's what the enemy wants. The enemy wants to mess with your mind. The enemy wants to keep you held and keep you bound. So now you don't even realize it's actually superficial. And all you really need is a little Band-Aid. All you really need is a Band-Aid. Clean the wound and get a Band-Aid and come before God. Really, God just wants you to surrender that thing and come before him. It's not even a deep cut. It's an artificial wound. But the enemy wants to use that to hinder you and to hinder your process. Don't allow him. So I hope that blessed somebody. I hope y'all caught that. And so the scripture that I had when I posted that video initially was from Psalms 91, verse 1. And the title of it was called Safety of Abiding in the Presence of God. Safety in abiding in the presence of God. And the scripture, it said, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And so I just want you guys to chew on that, to eat on that, because it tells us right there, when we're dwelling in God's presence, when we're dwelling in that safety place with God, one, if you continue to read that scripture, he's covering us, he's keeping us. So the scripture was Psalm 91. And in the video, I read the entire Psalm 91. But this one, I just pulled out the first verse. So Psalm 91, verse 1. But I encourage you all to read the entire Psalm 91, because it talks about God's protection. It talks about what he'll do, how he'll cover you, how he'll keep you, those who abide in him, how nothing will touch you. Even when the pestilence come, it won't come near you. It talks about all of that. But for the purposes of this scripture and, the analogy with my thumb, I pulled verse 1 from Psalms 91. And it says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And when you read that, it's talking all about God's covering, because I'm in the shadow, and it blessed my soul. And I just wanted to share that with you all, to dwell in God's presence. Get back into the covering and alignment of God. And that even when, and rest in knowing this, that even when you've been out of covenant or out of alignment, or maybe you didn't really hear God, and maybe, you didn't hear God initially on something. God is so faithful and he's so merciful that he'll still keep you covered even in the midst of that. He'll still keep you even in the midst of you kind of going down this other, maybe this other path that God didn't technically call you down to. God will still keep you. He's still faithful and merciful that he'll keep you. So I just wanted to share that because that blessed me.